coming up on Dialogue Weekend. The heaviest fighting between Israelis and Palestinians since 2014 leaves an increasing number of casualties, including civilian deaths. Where is the conflict headed? Tesla has suspended use of Bitcoin for vehicle purchases due to climate change concerns. Bitcoin value plummeted after Elon Musk's tweet. Will vast energy use burst the cryptocurrency bubble? And this week's Newsmaker, now on Dialogue Weekend.
Welcome to Dialogue Weekend. I'm Xu Qinduo. Since the start of the holy month of Ramadan in mid-April, tensions have escalated between Israel and the Palestinians. This week's violence in Gaza and Israel is seen as the worst since 2014. At least 136 people have been killed in Gaza and 8 have died in Israel since the fighting began. Now clashes have spread to the West Bank. According to the UN, an estimated 10,000 Palestinians have left their homes in Gaza since Monday because of the conflict. So what's behind the current escalation and what are the likely consequences? To find out more, I'm joined in the studio by Anna Tangeng, independent current affairs commentator, and via Skype by Mir Javan-Danfar, Middle East analyst. So welcome to the show, gentlemen. Mir, I will start with you. Since you are in Tel Aviv, tell us what it is like and how local people respond to the latest conflicts there.
Well, we just had, Mr. Xu, we just had 2 air raid sirens in the last 40 minutes before I came on this program. We heard that the Iron Dome system, which Israel designed, has actually, we heard it actually intercepted a number of missiles, and we heard the booms, but there have been at least 2 missile landings in areas close to Tel Aviv, in Ramadan and also in Rishon LeZion, which are close to Tel Aviv. And this is the first time in 2 days that there have been attacks against Tel Aviv. And I think the expectation for now is there are mixed reports. Some people believe, there's some reports that there are talks of ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. But as we can see, the fighting is unfortunately continuing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mir, tell us, what's the latest? What are the factors leading to the latest conflicts? First start with, the mosque over there, because the policemen and the civilians over there, and then we see the quick escalation of basically you see the rocket, you see the airstrikes against each other. Since 2014, that's quite some years.
Mr. Xu, we have two separate issues here that came together for this. One of them is Palestinian domestic politics, and the other one is Israeli domestic politics. Let's start with the Israeli domestic politics. Mr. Netanyahu failed to to put together a government. Meanwhile, in the month of April, we saw some clashes in the city of Jerusalem. There were some disputes over barricades being put near Damascus Gate. This is something that's very important to Palestinians. Just normal barricades that sometimes you see to control the flow of the public. But the Palestinians got angry. After 3 weeks, it was removed. There was a lot of tensions, and at the same time, unfortunately, there was a situation where a Palestinian went and beat up a Jewish person in Jerusalem, and he put it on TikTok. So this energized the Israeli right-wing, the Israeli extremist organization Lehava, who for some reason was allowed to come to Jerusalem to demonstrate. As bad as terrible and as criminals what the TikTok video was, to allow the Lehava to come to that part of Jerusalem to demonstrate was a provocation, also was escalation. And we have that, and while these tensions are brewing up, we have a planned eviction of Palestinians from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in Jerusalem, and also the end of Ramadan. So, the Israeli government could have subdued at least part of the pressure, although it's not entirely responsible, but by not allowing Lehava to go on, this Jewish extremist organization, to go and demonstrate, which only added to a very explosive situation at a very explosive time and in a very explosive place, which is Jerusalem. On the other hand, we have the Palestinian elections that were cancelled. Mr. Mahmoud Abbas cancelled them because Israel did not allow campaigning in Jerusalem. Of course, Israel was not going to allow Hamas to come and campaign in East Jerusalem, but Mr. Abbas cancelled it also because the PLO is not doing well. So Hamas, who wanted to strengthen its position in Palestinian politics saw the Israeli government actions in Jerusalem as an opportunity to portray itself as the defenders of Palestinians. Therefore, while the Israeli government's miscalculations led to the start of this conflict, Hamas, which was trying to look for an opportunity, as I said, for its position in Palestinian politics, escalated it by firing 70 missiles at Jerusalem, which is what set off the conflict to go from Jerusalem to Gaza and what we have now.
Mm-hmm. It seems, Anna, it's almost like every time both sides sometimes you can find that they can do better. They could have done better to avoid the conflicts. But of course, it's a complicated issue, as everybody understands that. But we do know that the U.S., due to its close relationship with Israel and its major role in this region, I would say, international community had this expectation the U.S. would play some new role to help calm the situation. So it's sending a mid-ranking diplomat to the region. So will the situation be improved because of, obviously, like tentative involvement of the U.S. here?
Well, I have a little sympathy for Biden on this one. He's not throwing Harris or Blinken or getting personally involved. They're sending an emissary. This is basically a undersecretary of state. He is familiar with the area. He's the undersecretary of state for this Israel and Palestine. But you have to go back a little bit a ways, and that goes to everything that Jared Kushner was doing. He basically sidelined the Palestinians, pushed them out of the deal when he was trying to do things with the other countries in the Middle East. They were frustrated because Palestine has not come up with a single unified government or position. One says yes, the other says no. So it's been building up in that. But I think the Palestinian position was this is about them, and they're not going to be sidelined. So the opportunity was rife there, and then there's this issue about Netanyahu losing the election. Perhaps this is a way that he can say, well, I have to stay in because we have an emergency. Now, in terms of where the U.S. goes from this, politically, it's an absolute dog for Biden. If he goes too far for Israel, you'll hear screams, and you already are, from the left wing who are saying, look, this is an apartheid situation. The Palestinians' rights are being abused. You see the stuff on social media, somebody literally trying to push somebody out of their home that family's been there for 40 years. So it's a very emotional stuff. And if he goes to the Palestinians, of course, there are very powerful forces in the U.S. who will punish him. He's looking now towards the midterm elections. He wants to put this under the carpet and hope somebody else will figure out how to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Mir, if you look at the situation, as we reported, clashes has spread to the West Bank. I mean, Tel Aviv is also, the situation there. So what's next, stage? What's the end game, let's say?
The end game for Israel is, I think the end game for both Israel and Hamas is try to come out of this current fighting with a stronger hand for their own domestic audiences. For Mr. Netanyahu, who has, luckily for him and unfortunately for the opposition, one of the major parties, the right-wing parties, which was actually was negotiating to sit with the change bloc, which ran against Mr. Netanyahu, has actually now switched back and gone back to Mr. Netanyahu. So this conflict has inadvertently or on purpose, we don't know yet, but there's a lot of suspicion, has actually served Mr. Netanyahu's political goals. But nevertheless, that's one thing. The other is Israel always, look, we are, despite our military might, we are still one country in this region surrounded by a few enemies, such as in Lebanon and in Syria. And it's very important for Israel to come out of this looking stronger, having established deterrence. On the Palestinian side, Hamas, which I think actually was a bit of a miscalculation, an overreaction by firing those missiles, but it had its own, it did it on the back of calculations of Palestinian politics. I think it also wants to come out of this looking that it has achieved an important goal of sending missiles to Tel Aviv, and one missile that reached almost the city of Eilat in southern Israel. We never estimated in Israel that their missiles could travel so far. So that Hamas, it's important to come out looking stronger so they can use it in Palestinian domestic politics. Whether this will happen, it's difficult to know. We have to wait and see. But Mr. Biden is not going to get involved, as my colleague said in the interview in the studio. He's got bigger things. He's got bigger fish to fry in the United States. And to be honest with you, with the shale oil in America being discovered, the Middle East has lost its luster. We're not as dear to U.S. presidents as we were before.
Mm-hmm. Well, as Amir said, obviously this is not on the top, list of the U.S. administration, Biden administration here. But then, the Biden government also promised to this, or they are committed to this two-nation, two-state solution. Are we going to see anything like the U.S. will do to contribute to this two-state solution over there?
Well, I don't know what they can do at this point. You can't have negotiations until the fighting stops, and right now it's not clear. And I would agree with Amir that this is a situation where both have to figure out how they can look strong to their domestic audiences. But this is an incredibly complex problem, and right now there are a lot of Arab states who are not happy. They've already voiced that this is not acceptable in their books. This is not something that they can play to their public's satisfaction. So at this point, it is a complete mess. No one wants to have their fingerprints on it. And as a result, unfortunately, you're just going to see this play out. Netanyahu will probably stay in power. And that's probably what he wants. And the PLO are going to say that, look, we're standing up to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Well, now we turn to the controversy over cryptocurrency. On Friday, Bitcoin was heading for its worst week since February, while dogecoin leapt by 25%. As the latest tweet on them from Tesla boss Elon Musk sent the digital coins on a wild ride. To find out more, we are joined by Anthony Chan, former JP Morgan chief economist. So, Mr. Chan, there obviously seems like a technical issue here. Tangen, let's start with you. The tweet, and also Tesla says, we are not going to continue to accept Bitcoin for the purpose of purchasing our car. What's going on here?
Well, it's really hard to gauge exactly where Elon Musk is. I think Saturday Night Live was the appropriate place for him. He can surprise people there. Actually, that was part of the problem because he kind of made a joke out of Dogecoin. It went down. But this is kind of seesaw that's going up and down. Now, what's unusual is that he is a brilliant scientist. There's no question. He's one of the leading minds scientifically. Yes. But he suddenly discovered that Bitcoin uses a lot of energy, like 773 kilowatts per coin, because they have to do all this mining. Now, for people who are saying, why do they do this? Why do they use so much electricity? What happens is you have this, you have all these books, multiple books, all right, and you have to make sure that each transaction is cleared and put onto all of the books and that they all agree that this is a valid transaction. So when you're talking about thousands and thousands of books, it takes a very complex process to do that. So the mining is actually the way that they keep track of the Bitcoin. That's why it's there. Now, in contrast, Dogecoin only uses 0.12 kilowatts to make a coin. So it's a massive fact, massive fact. But the issue is that Dogecoin was started by two guys as a joke. All right, they literally said, they said, we're going to make our own strange coin and see what happens. A lot of people have seen it as a Ponzi scheme. There have been questions about how it's being used in terms of nefarious transactions, hiding things like that. But that's true of all of these, electronic coins that they're using. The whole point of these is to be anonymous, to not have your transactions recorded. Now, who is attracted to that? Well, not the best people. People who are involved in white slavery, in the black market, drugs, smuggling, money laundering, you name it. It's all and just avoiding taxes. So there's really, in the future, it's doubtful that governments are going to go along with this idea that having anonymous transactions flowing going around the world is a good idea.
Well, Anthony, we have talked about this Bitcoin, Dogecoin here. On the show, of course, Elon Musk said it was hustle. And then in the following tweet, he said, he's going to launch this SpaceX with, what do we call it, like a Doge-1 mission on the moon, and accept Dogecoin to pay as a payment method for his, products over there. So what's your understanding of all the development here?
Well, again, Elon Musk has a colorful personality. He has been known to say things and then later change his mind. I think this is no different. I think that one of the things that we must understand is that he probably got a lot of pressure from people that believe in improving the economy after realizing, as you just heard, all the energy that Bitcoin and those type of currencies utilize. And we know that Tesla is sort of stands for clean energy. When you look around the world, you do realize that $1 billion of inflows into Bitcoin results in the use of about 5.4 million tons of carbon emissions. I mean, these are numbers that have been put out by Bank of America and other researchers. And I think all these numbers were thrown at Elon Musk, and as a result, he decided to react in the way that that he reacted. Because remember earlier, he had received some reports from people that said that Bitcoin was energy efficient and it did not harm the environment. He seemed to buy into that. It was only until later when he was receiving conflicting reports on that that he had a change of mind.
Well, Anthony, of course, because climate change is a top priority for basically every government here, and understandably, there's a concern about the consumption of energy by Bitcoin. Will somehow Dogecoin be better than the Bitcoin in terms of consuming the energy? What about the digital currency, related issue, and that saves basically energy. It does not consume much energy. It's about just digital.
Yeah, I think if you move towards making these currencies more energy efficient or less carbon emission intensive, I think everyone could start to embrace it. In fact, Elon Musk opened the door by saying that if things were to change and these currencies would become less carbon emission intensive, he would also be open to accepting Bitcoin and any other type of digital currency. So I think we're going to be moving in that direction. And I think as China tries to move closer and closer towards being carbon neutral, with all the production of these digital currencies, we'll move in that direction. But that is not a process that's going to occur overnight.
What about the concern of, because it's anonymous, for Bitcoin, for Dogecoin, what about the concern of like money laundering or criminal activities related to that kind of currency?
Well, this sort of illicit activity, I think, is a red herring. A lot of people make that argument. But before Bitcoin, there was a lot of illicit activity taking place with regular currency. 20, 30, 40 years ago, you can't say that there was no illegal activity or crime taking place. It was taking place, and they were using U.S. dollars or other foreign currencies. So it makes it easier to use it because of the the fact that you can transact anonymously. But it's not to say that if we eliminated Bitcoin, that somehow crime and illicit activity would end. It would find a way to continue to take place.
Well, Anna, obviously, China is in the leading position in terms of going digital with its own official currency. It's not only about like a digital payment by, say, Alibaba or Tencent. Now we have this basically digital RMB here. Tell us, what's the Chinese consideration behind this? This is the biggest step here.
Okay, but let's be very clear. China's official digital currency has nothing to do with Bitcoin and all of these things. And I'm going to beg to differ with my learned colleague. Anthony is saying that, oh, well, it goes on, why should we stop it? Well, you can say that about a lot of things. White slavery, drugs, etc., child smuggling. Oh, it's going to go on. That doesn't mean that you encourage it. I was, had some experience as a prosecutor. I think you have to go after the criminals whenever you can. Don't make it easy for them. In terms of China's digital currency, this is something very different. It's literally a replacement for the paper currency. And what it allows the Chinese government to do is to make things more efficient. For instance, paying taxes. Taxes can be paid at point of transaction. They can track money wherever it's going in its digital form, even overseas. So that gives them more confidence that transactions are actually real transactions as opposed to phony ones that are trying to mask other bad things. So I think it's a very, very important step, but people really have to get away from this idea that somehow Bitcoin and the Chinese digital yuan have any
Different
kind of
things.
related.
Yeah,
they're
different.
both digital, but that doesn't mean that they're in any way related. One is legitimate, one is controlled by the government, it's backed by the full faith and confidence of the central bank. The other one is nothing. It is simply a measure of whether people want to do it. And you've seen this in the massive ups and downs. You know, the fact that, you know, Elon Musk is affecting the value in people's paychecks as opposed to somebody who's in charge of the Fed should worry you, because he's just popular. And I'm surprised. As a scientist, he knew how much energy was going this. He's not some CEO who says, "Oh, a little hazy on this stuff." He's a very, very sharp guy. He knew how much was going in there. I think he sometimes regrets what he says and turns about. But this was not a mistake. Oh, I didn't understand this.
That's Elon Musk. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let's leave it there for now and take a look at this week's Newsmaker. China's first Mars rover, Zhurong, landed on the red planet on the morning of May 15th. To find out more, we are joined in the studio by Dr. Yang Yuguang of China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation. Welcome to the show, Yuguang. So obviously, I mean, people have known already a lot about this whole process. Tell us, you know, as reported, it's a second country for China to basically acquire such ability, wonderful, I mean, outstanding ability to land a rover on the planet. How significant it is?
You know, just before today, only the United States can land a spacecraft on the Martian surface and perform scientific research. You know that the landing today happened more than 320 million kilometers away from the Earth, and the entry, descent and landing on the Martian surface is much more complex than landing on Earth or on the Moon. You see, it must combine the heating shield, the supersonic parachute, the retro propulsion or rocket, and the landing gears together. All these together, and they must be switching in a very normal procedure. So any error or any wrong done to the switching also may cause the failure of the whole mission. And this must be done in a very highly autonomous mode. So that's the difficulty. And because we've already done this today very successfully, it means that today, at least in this field, we are already been an advanced country.
Oh yeah, that's obviously, I mean, the part of the Chinese goal, right? You know, to from investing a lot, you know, to do a lot of projects with a lot of goals until today. basically you are becoming one of the countries with advanced, I would say, command or mastery of this technology to do that. So how, tell us in particular people outside China, how, does China come to this stage? Many people say, oh, China has a long-term planning, China has ambition, China has this strong interest in space exploration over there.
Exactly speaking, we do, as you mentioned, we have a very ambitious goal to become an advanced country. So we must have our achievements in many fields, such as we mentioned the deep space exploration, the lunar exploration, manned space program, and the navigation satellites, remote sensing satellites, and the communication satellites. So, but on the other hand, we still must be aware that China is still a developing country. Mm-hmm. So we only have limited budget. We have more money on the projects which can have direct returns to our national economy and the social progress. So in this program, we must have very high efficiency. To ensure this efficiency, we should be very careful in choosing the programs. So for the Mars program, you know that including this TIANWEN-1, we only have 2 projects concerning with Mars. The next one will be a sample return mission. So you see that because we only have a very limited projects and a limited goal, so we can only combine these orbiting, landing, and roving, these 3 missions together.
Well, that's obviously that's something because usually you would do it in different separate missions, basically. But now China has done it in one mission. And tell us, what's the next stage? What's the next step for the space exploration or for the Mars exploration here?
For the Mars exploration, you see that we still need to wait for about 90 days for the Zhurong rover to get the helpful information for scientists. And for the orbiter, it will obviously work longer to get the overall information about the whole globe of Mars. And for the future program, you know that China also in the future will have a Jupiter mission, an asteroid mission, and even missions to the far beyond the Jupiter, such as maybe Neptune or Uranus. So for maybe in the middle of this century, in these kind of deep space missions, we can say that we also become advanced countries.
Mm-hmm. What about this, of course, for since China is now in the position here, almost like a leading position together with the US in terms of this technology to reach to the Mars and do some research over there. And the research will be helpful, will be significant to the development of human beings. Basically, every country can benefit from that. What about the international cooperation? Like other countries say, the scientists would have a strong interest in the Chinese mission or in the US mission. Say, what about like we join your mission and do something together?
According to the information from the White Book of China Aerospace, the international cooperation is one of the important part of the becoming an advanced country in space field. So either in the manned space programs and also in these deep space missions, we have very good cooperation with our countries. For instance, we have a ground station in Argentina, which is critically necessary for our deep space missions. And also, we have payloads from European countries. So these kinds of cooperations help each other. And not only we can get more comprehensive knowledge from different missions from different countries, but also, this is a very important point to reduce the threshold of this kind of investment. So it makes it easier for the decision makers to choose this kind of mission. If don't have international cooperation, we will need more we will need more money for a certain country. So that will be a quite different situation.
It's a smart way, basically win-win.
Exactly.
Everybody can participate, everybody contributes, and also everybody will benefit from such a mission. So yeah, that's wonderful. Let's have the best wish for this Mars probe there, and of course it will come back, send back a lot of beautiful pictures and a lot more positive information, obviously. Very encouraging. Thank you, Yu Guang.
Thank you.
With that, we're coming to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also watch us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Jinduo. You can find me on Twitter, Xu Jinduo in one word. Thanks for watching. See you next week.